loved about that moment, other than the moment, was the time with your family, that they were out on the field. Your babies were there to enjoy that with your wife, Brittany. How was that?
It was special. I could not have imagined that happening under a better scenario.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was stressful going into that game for a couple of reasons. You know, it wasn't like we were 20 yards away, so you know, okay, it's going to happen in the first quarter, and then they're going to stop the game, and you know, we do the deal, and then we're on with the game. It's, you know, you're 200 and something yards away, and so while you feel like, okay, on an average day we should be able to accomplish that, you just don't know when, you don't know the circumstance in the game. You know, what if it's a critical drive in the game, a 2-minute drive? You know, how does this all unfold? So you're just trying to get your mind wrapped around it. You want to be somewhat prepared for it so that you're able to just kind of compartmentalize, right? But it was so unknown, and so for it to happen in a way like that where we were truly able to enjoy it, right? It happens on a touchdown pass right before the halftime. The game's, you know, within our control. I was truly able to relax, share that with everyone in the Superdome and everyone watching on TV, and then go share it with my family, and it just made it so special.
Yeah, that was perfect. You got to admit that was perfect.
Yes.
Was it a relief to get that accomplished?
It was.
You probably got tired of everybody wanting to know about it.
It was to a degree. I tell you what was cool after it was that the communication between all the receivers and the tight ends and the running backs after that was, okay, so now that you have the record, you know that literally every pass that we complete from now on is a new record. So each one of us is, you know, fighting for, you know, all the skill players. Mm-hmm. They're all fighting to catch the next pass because they know that that's the next record.
This has nothing to do with our current conversation, but something Brees talked about. The NFL viewing audience, 50% women. Did you know that?
I did not.
Wow.
I love it.
That's what I'm here for.
I love it.
That's what I'm here for, Drew Brees.
My 4-year-old daughter's a football fan. I know that.
Yeah. Started early. We got some breaking news, obviously, from the league meetings. We're not going to belabor the non-call, but there was some news coming out of Arizona, and that was that now these things are reviewable. The non-call and what's the other one? Pass interference.
Yes.
That was also now reviewable. So we're talking about a league that drags its feet on a lot of things. What do you think about how rapidly they were able to move and be successful?
Yeah, obviously there was a lot of pressure after the NFC Championship game and the call or the no call. But I think the league and the competition committee, and listen, our head coach is on the competition committee, Sean Payton. They are constantly trying to make the game better. They're trying to make the game safer. They're trying to make the fan experience better. So there's constant improvements, and it's never perfect, and it's never an exact science, right? And so there's, at times, and it sounds like this is somewhat experimental. It sounds like this is going to take place for a year, and let's see how it goes.
Like most rules, they'll watch it for a year and see how it goes.
I'm interested to see what difference it makes in certain games, right? Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, that will be kind of the telltale sign as to whether this is something that carries forward or something that's just one year and done. But bottom line is they're trying to make it to where a situation like that doesn't happen again, right? If there's an obvious call, a game-changing call in a critical situation, that we're going to make sure we get it right.
Where are you in your off season at this point? Are you totally off? Are you able to have that balance now with the Brees clan? Or I know they're in school and doing all of that, but I would imagine you're kind of hard to hold down.
Yeah, life is crazier during the off season than it is during the season. During the season is structure, right? You get up at this time, you eat this, you go work out, you go watch film, you go to practice.
That's just Brittany.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. It's very, very structured, and it's such a routine and just a consistent schedule. The off season's nuts because the kids are involved in 2 or 3 different sports each, right? And then I've got my off season kind of training program, and I segment that out, you know, from what I do in February versus what I do then in March and April, and then we ramp up into practices in May and June, and all the other things that we're involved in, our foundation, businesses, all kinds of other endeavors. So it's crazy right now.
Were you talking about some of your businesses? I went on your website last night. You know what I got? A big fat nothing. It's closed for repairs.
It's under construction.
It's under construction.
There's a little sign hanging down.
I know, I
that says
saw
under
that, but
construction.
I was quite disappointed.
Yeah. Well,
But, you know, it'll get better. It's like,
you have to constantly tweak and keep people engaged, as you
that.
know, and evolve. So we felt like there were some big improvements and some big changes that we wanted to make to the website. So we're in the process of doing that and linking that to social media and linking that to a lot of the ways that we want to connect with fans and people that want to support our foundation and other things.
that's 5 years ago. Would you have been having that conversation with, you know, some of the tech aspects of all of this and also just the media that's required with today's conversations?
Yeah, it has certainly progressed. I know the way that we use tech as a football team now, and the advantages that it gives us compared to when I first entered this league. When I first entered this league, we would watch film with like these super VHS tapes, you know, and so if you want to watch a certain clip or cut up or practice or game, you had to find it on the shelf and then you pop it in and that's not the right one, you know, and now let's go to the...
You personally or the video guy?
No, we would personally
okay.
do that. We would do that in our meeting rooms. And prior to that, it was, I think, the 16 millimeter film where you'd actually be splicing film together and putting it in the reel and cranking it up. And now it is basically all there on your computer in your meeting room. I can access any game, any practice, any play that we've run throughout my entire career in New Orleans with one click of the button. And it's amazing the information, the data that you can collect, the percentages that you can run. You can immediately categorize things in a way that just provides you with information so quickly. It helps make my preparation so much more efficient. Game day itself has gone from just your typical pass pictures that were black and white and hard to read to now, you know, we've got the Surface tablets where we're getting all the basically every drive is categorized there to where I can be looking at a play in 4 different segments, the 8th drive of the game, and I'll say, wait a minute, they played that defense back in the 2nd drive. So I'll, you know, swipe. Now I'm in the 2nd drive, click on the same play. Okay, now I see how they're disguising that. They're not going to fool me again, kind of a thing. You know, so it's just, it's the amount of information and the way we're able to process it now gives us such a huge advantage.
And how does your head coach use all of that as well? Because he's uber prepared as it is, but to have just even more information to keep those guys at the building till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Do I remember your Bears game? It was a few years ago, and he studied how many times players slipped on Soldier Field's turf. And he threatened players, if you wear the wrong shoes, and if I see you slip, that's going to be a problem. But he had that information at the ready.
No, he did. It's amazing. It's amazing what information is vital to your business, right, or your success. And to think that the type of shoes that we're wearing on game day is something that Sean Payton would be so obsessive about, but it's probably the most obsessive thing he's about. There's certain fields that are just typically bad fields, right? Or we talk about wearing 7-stud cleats as opposed to molded cleats, or you know, your speed cleats, or whatever it is. And so he'll sit there with clip after clip on a Monday morning prior to playing this team, saying, if you have the wrong cleats on Sunday,
Yes.
you know, we're going to have problems. So he's obsessive.
I was just thinking of him at the owners' meetings, at the league meetings, how that must go as well, because he's on the competition committee. And I'm just having a couple of laughs at his expense, but the two of you and the relationship that you've enjoyed, and just the, you know, the football relationship, and I assume the personal relationship, how have you each helped the other to be successful?
I tell you, the amazing thing about Sean Payton, and I think one of his greatest strengths is he is such a great communicator. He is such a great teacher. He's a great leader. He finds ways to motivate and inspire based upon your personality. He can read people, he can read situations very, very well, and he understands that based upon a guy's personality or maybe where he is in his career or the position that he plays, that guy requires maybe a different type of motivation, or I'm going to have to come at this guy a little bit different. And it's amazing how he uses humor to drive a point home as well. And I think this is a Bill Parcells, thing.
Definitely.
But I remember at one point we had a safety who was great at getting interceptions, but wasn't the fastest guy. And so whenever he would intercept the ball, Sean would go over to the DBs and be like, hey, you're going to have to block everybody for him to score, okay? He's not a good enough athlete to score. He can pick it off, but he can't score. And so, that DB hears it, and it's one of these funny things. We all laugh, but deep down, he was like, wait, he's taking a stab at me. Okay, well, I'm going to prove him wrong. And so, this DB goes out and returns three interceptions for a touchdown that year, And so he finds ways to do that that are just unique. And I think it's, based upon him being part of the Bill Parcells tree, where he takes those different types of lessons and motivations that he learned from him. I think, too, the reason Sean and my relationship is so strong is 13 years ago, I was coming off a major shoulder injury from the San Diego Chargers. I didn't have any teams in the NFL that were interested in having me become their quarterback. I had some teams telling me I had a 25% chance of ever playing football again. And Sean Payton looked me dead in the eye and said, I believe in you. You're my quarterback. You're going to come back and lead this team and lead this city, and we're going to do this together. And it became a collaborative thing from day one. I remember my first install meeting with Sean. We sat down, and I was expecting first-time head coach, Bill Parcells, lineage. This guy is just going to be hard-nosed, my way or the highway. Here's how it is. And I sat down, and he began drawing plays on the whiteboard. And I knew he came from the West Coast system, and I came from a different system, so I was expecting stuff I'd never seen before. And he started drawing a bunch of plays that were plays that I ran with the San Diego Chargers. And I said, oh, you guys run that play too? Mm-hmm. And he said, no. He said, it's first time I've seen it, but I know that you run it, and you run it well. It's what you're good at, so we're doing it. He's like, we're building this offense around you, by the way, and I want you to be confident with it, and I want to set you up for success. And I thought, wow, I mean, that seems like a pretty novel idea, but it's not that way everywhere. In many cases, especially with as much pressure as there is on head coaches in this league to win and win now, in many cases you see guys come in and, hey, it's my way and this and that, but he very early on made it very evident that this was a collaborative effort between me and him, and he was going to build this offense around me.
Do you operate still as a player who feels like you have something to improve? Is that mandatory for a successful athlete?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. How do you keep that fire?
It's because there is always something to prove. There's always another challenge. We've talked about evolution. We've talked about ingenuity. We've talked about the ability to continue to adapt, right, and evolve. And you have to do that in our league. Every offseason, regardless of what you accomplished the year before, everyone's watching your film. Everybody's studying you. And so they're going to be on to the stuff that you had success with last year. Mm-hmm. So you got to find ways to stay ahead of the curve. And so that is the challenge. Each and every offseason, it's, hey, what is going to be our bread and butter, right?
Like with your shoulder thing. I've always been fascinated by the shoulder thing that you do, and everybody bites, and it's so funny. All these years later, you still do that, and everybody bites. Is that an example?
There's a saying that we have about DBs and defensive players, and it's that they just can't help themselves, right? They are programmed to be hyper aggressive, right? I mean, that's who they are. That is their mentality. That's their personality. That's why they're great defensive players, right? They're aggressive. They're tough. But you start looking places and you start giving them a little shoulder twitch, they can't help but drive on it, and then that'll open up other opportunities. So, yeah, you kind of know the guys you can do that to. And listen, each week is different. You have to know what moves or what looks influence certain players a certain way, and then that goes into your game planning.
A lot has been talked about here, and the focus of our summit here is transformation. How have you transformed in the last 5 years as a quarterback?
Well, I just turned 40 years old. I understand that I'm more towards the end of my career than I am the beginning. Um, I feel like a huge part of my off-season preparation and the challenge with that is beating the aging process, right? Beating Father Time. And so, how do you stay ahead of that? Well, it's
Call Tom Brady.
What's that?
Sorry. Call Tom Brady.
Listen, his
couldn't
routine
resist.
is good.
Yeah.
I like mine too, though.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I'll say that there's not a guy who I have more respect for and what he's been able to accomplish year in and year out than Tom. I feel like I've got some insight into the things that he does, and there's a reason why he has the success that he has. He is so committed to it, and I'd say he constantly stays ahead of the curve in that regard. And honestly, I understand. I have to do that too. We're in the same boat. He's 41, I'm 40, so we're seeing all these young guys, these young gunslingers come in the league, and we're trying to figure out ways to keep an advantage over these guys, you know. And I think obviously there's no replacement for wisdom and experience, but the bottom line is that we play a very physical game that requires a lot of physical capability as well in throwing the football and taking a beating in the pocket and being able to come back time and time again, week after week, and continue to do it. So I find that I spend more time on recovery right now than I do anything else. I spend more time just
How does that look, recovery?
body recovery. Well,
How does that look?
my training regimen consists of everything that I look at. I say, is this making me a better quarterback? If this doesn't make me a better quarterback, and directly translate to what I do on the field, it's a waste of time. I can't be doing it. I don't have time to mess around with it. I have to be as efficient as I possibly can. So my training is more efficient. What I do for my recovery is more efficient. The process by which I lay out my off season is more efficient. I can't waste a day. I can't waste a second. And there's slight tweaks that I will make every off season just to change it up, and we continue to get more information, better information about diet, about sleep habits, about maybe a certain training exercise, right, that might directly carry over to what I do. So constantly making those slight tweaks, but also just staying very focused on what's going to help me be the best quarterback I can be.
And a great humanitarian as well, everybody. His foundation has given charitable contributions in the neighborhood of, $36 million since it was founded when you were in San Diego.
Yes.
You continue that in San Diego and Purdue and, of course, New Orleans. Why is that so key to who the Brees family is about?
I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to not just to play the game of football for as long as I've been able to play it, but I think the platform that gives me. I understand, because I know what it's like when I was a kid looking up to professional athletes or celebrities or people that were in a position of influence.
Yeah.
You just don't even know how much influence you can have on these young people by your every thought, word, and deed. And so I try to take advantage of every opportunity I get to be able to give back, to be able to influence in a positive way. Every child that I meet or teenager who comes up and says that they're a fan of me, I understand that might be 10 seconds that I have to transform that kid's mindset or his level of confidence or whatever it might be. It might motivate and inspire him to go a direction that he wouldn't have gone before that encounter, that interaction. And on a much bigger scope with our foundation, we feel like we have so many opportunities to be able to not only give back to the city of New Orleans, but to make it better than it was pre-Katrina and to certainly leave it better than when we found it.
When all said and done, absolutely. You will go down as one of my all-time favorites because I've always appreciated your consistency in dealing with me and dealing with the media. But when all is said and done and, the lights have been turned off on this career as you head on into, obviously, a Hall of Fame career, what do you want said about you, whether it's from a player, the equipment guy, a fan? What's the thing that will make it sweet?
I would love for people to say that I did it the right way and that I left it better than I found it. And that's I tell my kids that all the time too. And that is whatever situation you find yourself in, if you think about leaving it better than you found it, that's a great way to approach life, right? That could be something as simple as you walk in your room and it's a mess. Well, when you leave, let's leave it cleaner than when you found it. I heard a story one time about one of the military academies after they played one of their football games, that when the opposing team's stadium facilities people walked into the locker room, that it was spotless, that it was so much cleaner than when that team had first arrived. And this is after the game, right?
Yeah.
After guys been cutting their tape off and typically throw it on the ground and leave things a mess, and you just
Yeah,
kind of
I'd be one of those people.
And why would you care about it, right? It's somebody else's job. They're
That's
going to clean it up.
awesome.
And yet, if you take the mindset that whatever you do, you're going to leave it better than when you found it, I think you're going to accomplish a lot of great things in your life. And I think that it also shows a great level of gratitude, humility, and respect. And in the crazy journey of parenthood and fatherhood, when you sit there and second guess yourself at every turn as to how you're raising your kids, right? And the things that they do and say, and you're like, I think if you just focus on wanting them to be grateful, humble, and respectful, I think that will take them a long way in life.
And I know we're on the 000 there, but Daddy's Drew Brees. How do you deal with that when a fan wants something, but your little one wants you just as much?
Well, I know this. Your kids hear very little of what you say, but they see everything that you do, right? So I try to keep that in mind too. Not giving them any long lectures, even though I really want to at times. And just say, understand that the way I act, the way I conduct myself in public, the way that I interact with someone, that they are watching. And that regardless of what I say to them, that is what they will model. And that goes a long way.
Drew Brees, ladies and gentlemen.